Hi, I'm Burgess, and I research the history of political posters. And I think posters are important because long after elections have faded into memory, posters remain a vital image of what the election was about, and often posters are more remembered than the election themselves. One of the classic images of this is the 1979 Labour Isn't Working, designed by Saatchi and Saatchi for the Conservative Party. It remains an evocative image of the 1979 election, Mrs Thatcher's first victory. And even though the events of that election have long faded into the memory, the poster still remains. Posters can tell us something about how our own democracy is developed. They're a message from parties to people, and the study of this communication can show us what parties thought of the people and how this has changed. A good example of this is the 1910 election. During the election, the Conservatives were heavily criticised for their depictions of working class men. So in this example, we see a figure begging for help. He's submissive, and it's generally a caricature of the working man. The Conservatives realised the error of their ways, and by 1929, the posters in which they depicted working class men had changed dramatically. So for this example, the sunray treatment, we see society surrounded by an upright working man who has his arm round a frail old lady. And it's an image of what the Conservatives wanted society to be like. It wanted it to be cohesive. It wanted all classes to get on with each other. They were worried about class war. But I think the position of the working man in the image is demonstrative of how they wanted to depict the working man in 1929. As well as showing us how politics has changed over the years, posters can also show us continuities in electoral campaigning. In this poster from 1923, we see a working class man literally greeting the dawn, rising over an industrial landscape. The poster was produced for the Labour Party and reused again in 1929. The idea of the sun bringing in a better politics for Britain. And then again in 2010, if we look at the front cover of the Labour manifesto, we have a very similar image. Obviously, things have changed. The industrial landscape's been replaced with the green pastoral scene. And also there's more equality in the image. In the 1923 image, we saw the man greeting the dawn while his family, his wife and child, kneel behind him. In the 2010 image, there's more equality as the whole family welcomes in the breaking sun. But the idea remains the same, that the Labour Party would bring in a better Britain. It's not just the symbols that carry on in posters. Whole techniques have been used again and again from election to election. In 2010, David Cameron produced this image to demonstrate that he was, or attempt to demonstrate that he was a man who could be trusted with the NHS, as he promises not to cut it. But then, if we look at this image from 1929 and the Conservative Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin, we see a lot of similarities. The idea of trust is implicit from the gaze of both leaders. And even though posters speak to the masses, in these two images there's a kind of personal contact between leader and people. Obviously, in the Cameron image, it's much more laid back, and this reflects how politics has changed over the period. Cameron doesn't wear a tie, whereas Stanley Baldwin is looking very formal. Cameron's open-neck shirt, reflected Tony Blair in 1997, who famously appeared on the Labour manifesto, again, wearing no tie. In 1929 and in 2010, there are clear continuities. In both posters, the party is strangely evident. This is an appeal on basis of the leader, not of the party. And this is an appeal that we should put our trust in a person rather than the collective party.